Thank you. I'll jump right in. A lot of this talk has been motivated by what I've been hearing coming from a lot of the big AI companies like NVIDIA, et cetera, on costs. And we're seeing how these costs are escalating for industry. And we're seeing industry now saying, stop using the AI because it's costing too much. At the same time that's occurring, there's things we're doing in education that I think can help. So that's kind of the motivation for my talk today. But another thing to think about is how AI is affecting athletes. And I've been fond of Klæbo in the Winter Olympics and how well he had performed. And what was interesting about his breakaway movements in the competition towards the end is everybody knew that he was going to do it. His biology, given by God and nature, and also through training, is such that he can do that. But also his training team has been using AI in order to understand what's going on with his biology and his training and adjust it. And in fact, some of his trainers have said, unless athletes are using AI, they can no longer compete effectively. And I thought that was very interesting because it's kind of a metaphor for what's happening. AI is proceeding at the frontier line at hyper-exponential rates, but inside universities and organizations, we're adopting it at sublinear rates, much slower. Something's got to give here. Another way to think about it is there's all sorts of classes of technology that we have to deal with, from modern ERP systems to networking, even silicon chips. But most of that technology is not necessarily advancing extremely quickly. On the AI side, however, we're seeing that AI, especially AI that affects human beings, especially teaching and learning, quite frankly, and swarms of agents, and things now that we're using the term reflective, self-recursive AI, those technologies are moving very, very quickly. Just in the last 6 months, we've seen a number of changes in those technologies. So even the technologies are sprinting away from the pack. This is affecting the research domain. OpenClaw has ignited a growth of article submissions and papers. And so there's been a huge increase in the papers causing some concern. Are all these papers of high quality? Probably not. In the survey domain of doing research through surveys, especially in the social sciences, there's been an explosion there where people using AI can do the literature review, create the hypotheses for the study, create the survey design, launch the survey, field the results, analyze the results, and produce a published paper. A colleague and I did a little version of this, of going from soup to nuts, beginning to end, on creating a scientific paper entirely from using AI, and it is now possible and happening. Is it good? Probably not as good as it could be. There's a couple startups here that are trying to automate things like meta-analysis in research, an area of scientific study where you pull other studies and you try to glean out what are their influence sizes and effect sizes within the study. And that's starting to get automated. Personally, a colleague of mine decided to create a digital twin of his boss by taking everything she had written and said and put it into an AI chatbot for himself. And I said, that is a very strange thing to do. He said, why do you do it? He goes, well, I want to be prepared with when I talk to her with questions that I can ask beforehand. Another thing I've noticed is there was a provost, an academic colleague at a conference, non-technical. He asked me for help in connecting his OpenClaw to his OneDrive. Right. And then another person, a human resources executive, asked a colleague of mine for access to Claude Code. These are people who don't use technology at all who are now starting to use technology. So this is changing quickly. Now, despite this rapid change, we still have all sorts of things that are causing this to slow down and not go as fast. And the first one I'll call process gravity. And this is the way we do our work, our knowledge tasks. The business processes, or in the case of teaching and learning, how we go about doing that teaching and learning. So how humans do that communal work doesn't change very easily. And it doesn't change for a couple reasons, not because necessarily people are resistant to change, but because that's how the organization functions well. And disruption to those processes can disrupt what we do. There's another area of inertia, I'll call it context gravity. For those who use tools like ChatGPT and Anthropic, they're taking the context of your chat history and everything you've put in and making it permanent there and using it to try to make the chat better for you. And that's a way of keeping you in their environment and not moving out. And that's certainly helpful for the large AI vendors in trying to keep you a captive customer. But inside an organization, we have all sorts of context. And I taught in a class for 20 years. I kept a whole lot of material on my own that helped curate what I'm teaching. That's personal context. Within our universities, we have all sorts of documents and artifacts that are personal to us. These are things that we don't want to move around so easily. And that causes some inertia, some slowing down of how quickly we adopt the AI. And lastly, I think there's the notion of what holds an organization together, even universities. And typically it's the knowledge within that university and how the university describes itself that keeps it together and keeps it from changing too quickly. So despite that growth in AI and the fact that people are sprinting away from the pack, there still exists a lot of inertia. I think for those of us who use the technology, some wonderful things are starting to happen. You can take your intentions and turn it into action, whether it be a published, helping to contribute to a published report or analysis that you're doing, or configuration of software or other things. You can move from intention to action extremely quickly. And just that cycle time allows for more iteration and even more review. I'll be referencing a business case that I've been developing here exclusively with AI. It's now about 180 pages long, and it's describing a new business model, which I'm talking about today. But because of the use of AI, my colleagues have been able to go through quick iteration very rapidly. But in that question, I've been asking, or in that process, I've been asking a question of myself. How much knowledge is too much knowledge? When have we consumed enough knowledge? Well, you're starting to see that in the companies that are starting to their employees stop using the AI. It's costing too much money. But in general, humans wanting to have more knowledge is an ancient thing that we have done since we became human. It's got probably no limit on the upside of that. So I'm predicting that our thirst for knowledge will continue to cause us to consume more and more. I don't know what the upside limit is. I don't think anybody does at the moment. We're also seeing this happen right now economically in AI. It's called the Jevons paradox. Basically, as the price of something drops, consumption increases. While AI costs have been rising, what's actually under the hood, the cost per token, the unit of AI, has been dropping dramatically and will continue to drop dramatically. The problem is the consumption of the tokens is increasing by 200 or 300-fold more than the price drop, hence the increase in prices that we have to pay. And now you're seeing a lot of the large companies switching their models from a $20 a month fee or €20 a month fee to something that's token-based, for which you don't know what your upside usage will be. Well, they're doing that because of the Jevons paradox here. While their environments are getting more efficient, the usage is growing tremendously. If you go back to the beginning of the internet had companies that were dedicated to working what they called the long tail of e-commerce, or of commerce, meaning small transactions, small in quantity, perhaps small in individual profit, but when put together represent a very sizable opportunity. And you could say that Amazon and Google were two companies that were founded on trying to help solve the long tail problem for getting small niche products out. What's happening in AI today is AI is really focused on the most profitable, most expensive type of knowledge work today, obviously because of its cost. but also because that's where most corporations are putting the AI. In university land, we're not made for the fat tail here. We're kind of a long tail entity. I'll get a little bit more about that. This slide is actually from NVIDIA at their last conference in San Jose, California. And Jensen Huang, the CEO, spent quite a bit of time on this slide. But basically it's saying on the right-hand side here that the latest NVIDIA chips are going to be the most profitable chip for the companies who are going to deploy it. They'll be able to create premium tiers of AI services at high prices. And then some of the older chips can be used for a free tier. And so it dawned on me as I was watching that, and I knew this, I'd been in industry, we have cross-subsidization in our products all the time. We have some products that are very high margin, and some products actually lose money, but they work together as a group. In fact, here in the large AI vendors, they offer a free tier, so you can graduate your usage up to a paid tier and a more expensive paid tier. And they take the margins from the premium tier and apply it to the free tier. At least that's the theory. In higher ed, we need a free tier so our students can graduate and get jobs. And so I think that's the crux of the problem that we're having here, is the entire industry is not wired to democratize tokens or democratize AI. And by the way, when I say tokens, I substitute that in my head with the word knowledge. Tokens are knowledge. And if tokens are being rationed, knowledge is being rationed. Now, I'm going to give an example back in my past. I'm actually half Luxembourger and a Luxembourg citizen. Luxembourg was good enough to grant some of us citizenship in the last 5 years or so. And this is taken from Chicago, my hometown, and it's the vegetable market in 1918. At this time, my great-grandfather and grandfather would have been delivering vegetables in wooden boxes to the market that you see here. What's curious about this photo is it's half combustion engine and half horse and buggy. So this is a time when there's a transition between the two. And I've often wondered what a conversation between two farmers was like back then. I can imagine Farmer Bob looking at Farmer Jim, who is now driving the horse and buggy, but yesterday he had the truck. He said, hey Jim, that truck wasn't reliable, was it? You had to go back to the horse and buggy, which is way more reliable, huh? And they would laugh it up a bit. But in about 7 years, the horse and buggy is gone. It's all trucks from here on out, as all the farmers started to shift over. But there was this period of time, 10 years or so, where there was definitely a transition that took some time. But also going on at this time, the farmers who were growing the vegetables were being charged way too much money by carpenters to make the boxes. And so they banded together, formed a co-op, and they decided to source their own boxes. The nice thing about being poor Luxembourg German immigrants that coming over is they all had a second trade. That trade might have been carpentry typically. And so they formed their own company, created their own co-op. That co-op is still alive today. And they were able to take advantage of the democratization of boxes for their own use. So this leads to a question in higher education. Should we buy or should we build? And the mantra has been in IT, we should buy, not build. But I think that's shifting. Certainly in the area of software startups, the failure rate for those software startups is quite high. Always has been and will continue to be. However, in the ed tech sector within AI, that failure rate is very high even the first year alone. And it's going to get a little bit higher, I think. There have been so many new AI startups launched in 2024. For the investor community, the VC community, it's very difficult for them to figure out what software AI companies they should invest in. In addition, I was looking at a Financial Times article about the explosion of apps in the Apple App Store, yet no explosion in the downloading. We are overproducing applications in the App Store and nobody's looking at them. There are companies that are starting to build wrappers around a core frontier model, whether it be from Anthropic or OpenAI. Those I don't believe are very defendable. At the same time, we have all these vendors coming at us in the educational sector, at least in my world, where they come in with a solution over one area and they want to grow it into another and get their AI to rule everything within my organization. So the competitors are really trying to get our share of wallet in the biggest way possible. I don't think that's going to work either. And to make it worse, and we know this in higher education, knowledge work is not that easy to actually transform. If you think about it, for the farmer, what was being transformed in my picture was use of a combustion engine to move the vegetables to the market. In our work, it's trying to automate the knowledge tasks. The problem is we do not have a complete inventory of knowledge tasks. In fact, we don't even have a complete agreed upon taxonomy for knowledge tasks. We have profound disagreement on researchers on what a taxonomy of knowledge tasks would look like. So the whole world is talking about automating knowledge tasks, yet they do not know what they are talking about. They only have a vague idea of what those are. In many cases, those knowledge tasks are idiosyncratic to the person, individual to the person. They're often opaque. Oftentimes you'll ask experts, how did you do that? They respond, I don't know, I just did it. It is hard to reverse engineer what the process should be. I just went through this with legal experts, 2 lawyers who redlined the exact same contract. They could not agree on how to do it. And it's a routine contract, very profound differences. And our knowledge is intertwined with our emotion, which makes this a little bit harder. This is a nice painting by Van Gogh on women picking olives. Where I used to live in California, I had an olive tree and a grapefruit tree, and I could go to my grapefruit tree, pick a whole bunch of grapefruits in about 10 minutes, put them in a basket, bring them in, cut them up, and have grapefruit juice in another 10 minutes. Picking olives is not the same way. Picking one at a time. And you're sitting there for like 4 hours, and your bucket's maybe halfway full. Then you got to go back, clean them up, water them, clean them up again, put them in a jar, brine them, let them sit a week, rebrine, repeat for another 3-4 months until you get olives. Transforming knowledge work is a little bit more like picking olives than grapefruits, and higher education is ground zero to that. So I think we should build more of our own AI software for all these reasons, and probably the biggest one is, and that's a Venus flytrap. Do not let the vendors pull you into their Venus flytrap. In education, we do have some problems, though. To an extent, you could say that the first 100 years of higher education in the 1900s has been getting everybody who could go to a university and be successful to be successful. And so, you know, a picture of Abraham Lincoln, known as an autodidact, meaning the only thing he read were books. But he was a fantastic learner with just books. He was on the frontier and didn't really have tremendous interaction with any intellectual circle. But he became an extremely intelligent person just by reading. That's not our target audience. I had a nephew who was struggling in college, and my sister called me up and said, hey, you teach in a university, you're a CIO. He's going to live with you this summer. He's going to work for you. You're going to whip him into shape, and you're going to get him improved next year. I said, great. He worked with me for the summer. He did great working for me. A few months later, after he went back, my sister called me and said, you failed so miserably, you're going to take him again next year. I did the same thing next year, same result. Now, what made the difference? And he got out with only an associate's degree after spending too much money, but he did get a degree. He met a woman. And she said, dude, we're not getting married unless you get a degree. And he got his degree. That's a lot like a lot of our students. We are now teaching those type of students we have to get in. There's a way to do that. And there's an interesting story that people gloss over a little bit. Shaq, NBA fame, Shaquille O'Neal, when he was in college, he woke up to see somebody looking over him. And he thought he died. But it was actually Dr. J, the famous basketball player. And he couldn't believe it. Now, he doesn't really say in some of these articles exactly what was going on, but Dr. J was there to say, hey, get your butt out of bed, get to class, and get to the gym. You're lazy. A Hall of Famer coaching who they didn't quite know if he was going to be a Hall of Famer, but a future Hall of Famer. What an experience for Shaquille O'Neal. Imagine if every student could have that experience. There's another place AI can play, certainly, and that's face-to-face interaction with students joined up with AI. Obviously, a small face-to-face session is ideal. This is not delivered via fully AI. This is a very in-place environment, face-to-face environment. But I think if we start to combine the two, we get this interesting combination where we can have highly effective education and reach a lot of students and start to redirect our faculty efforts into meaningful interactions and motivational interactions with learners, where we really need to be. And the other thing that I do want to mention and why this is important is a lot of talk going on about it. Are we getting dumber with AI? My background is cognitive psychology and how we learn. And neurons are just like muscles. You need to exercise them. So you absolutely have to put your brain through effortful work in order to learn the material and get it wired into your brain. In fact, one of the ways we measure the difference between an expert and a novice in terms of understanding what's going on in the brain, we can put instruments around their head and start to analyze what's going on. For the novice on a task that's new to them or that they're learning, their brain lights up like a Christmas tree. For the expert who's been doing that task for a long time, there's practically no energy consumption difference. The brain is pretty much on autopilot. And that's the hallmark of the human brain. It gets stronger as it's more exercised more, but it's also way more energy efficient. By the way, your brain runs on 20 watts. So we are literally dim bulbs. So all this said, I think we need a new model. I think we need to take advantage of all of these trends and get more knowledge to students, more tokens to students. A couple things, though, along the way. Data centers are getting tougher to do. They're very intense feats of engineering with lots of power. We can no longer control our own means of production. It's going to be harder for us to make these data centers. We need to work with industry on future-proofing our data centers. Industry needs our students to be AI ready for the present and for the future. Now, we don't know what those skills are. I have a hunch it's going to be critical thinking skills. It'll be the really key skill to use AI well. We also have faculty that can benefit from more industry problems that apply to research. And we have students who need some experiential learning opportunities, and sometimes industry university research puzzles are helpful. I also think we need a cross-subsidy model. Just like industry has the ability to take from a high-priced tier and give it to a lower-priced tier, we need to have ability to redirect margins, profit, from one offering in order to make this available to learners, and I think it's right in front of us. There are things higher education likes. We definitely want access to frontier hardware, and we want to get models that are free. We want to have good, affordable pricing. We definitely like to stay current with the hardware and software advances. We want our students to be accessing these frontier research problems and applications. Industry likes things too. Industry likes our brands and our value. Industry likes our access to researchers and students and help develop the workforce of tomorrow. I think we're going to have to play around with some different models of democratization. In the United States, there's been many different patterns of how government, industry, and public sector can work, and higher ed can work together. I've highlighted 4 of them here that I think are important. One of them is member cooperatives. Just like I described, universities getting together and starting to use their collective resources to solve the problem. Commercial cross-subsidies, which I discussed a little bit a while ago. Public-private partnerships where we use the land or other right-of-way advantages we may have and pair that up with industry. And then, of course, philanthropy. And there's a couple forms of philanthropy that are at play, just regular old philanthropy where donors come in and give money, but also where they may invest in something that either is student-run or university-run. So I think that we can work out some of these combinations. Certainly in the United States, where I'm at right now, we're starting to put together a public-private partnership that involves data center operators who can operate a data center, make the money to do that appropriately, industry partners who can bring research workloads in to take advantage of that hardware, and then students who can come in and help, and then a cross-subsidy to take the margins from that and apply that into a free tier for the learners. And I think we can do that. And I think with the economic trends around the cost of tokens increasing, that knowledge will continue to be rationed, and this will give us some opportunity. We have to do this, I think, through a separate entity, and that separate entity has to be a more profit-focused entity that can do that work. In higher education, we're really bad at making a profit. We don't try to. We have a mission. We want to extend our mission. But I think if we bring in that industry cross-subsidy model and we use some philanthropy and other state funding, we can build a sustaining evergreen data center with AI infrastructure, at least for the next 5 to 8 years, so that students can take advantage of this. This is a variation of what I had done at UC San Diego with our supercomputer center there. We brought industry workloads in, had to charge market rates at a higher price. We used the profit from that to fund other things that were available for free for our students and faculty. Most importantly, we can do this in a sovereign way using our own infrastructure. And there's plenty of open source tooling in AI to take advantage of it, and there are very good open source solutions and more coming down the road. And so I think we can certainly use those. So I think the future is great for higher education at this time. I think there's some opportunities that are available to us in solving this democratization and cost problem and sustainability problem. And I think it's going to take some much closer economic coordination with some big industry partners. So thank you.